Every human being goes through different stages in life. Most of these stages are documented. Certificates issued, and this could be from birth, when you die, when you get married, amongst others. Today on Law Express, we discuss registration of birth. I have with me two private legal practitioners to discuss the topic as usual. You'll get to meet them right after this commercial break. My name is Noella Seydu, and you just tuned into Law Express. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
My mother passed on to me an age-old moisturizing secret handed down from generation to generation. Shea butter has been and still remains the ultimate and trusted natural product for the skin. It is safe for all, including newborns. I use Violon Shea butter products for my hair and skin and for all my children right from birth. Violon Shea butter is an amazing diaper cream. I love my family. That is why I trust only Violon Shea butter products for our skincare needs.
Violon Shea butter. Feed your skin right.
No victim of gender-based violence should be silent. Every human deserves dignity and respect. If your health, dignity, and security is undermined, you must seek assistance. Call the Orange Support Center for assistance on toll-free number 0800 111 222. This message is by the kind courtesy of the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA.
Courage Asabangna. Courage is a law lecturer and a legal practitioner. He enjoys visiting the beach, playing football, and watching football also. He is also a passionate traveler. Vitus Bang. Vitus is a private legal practitioner and also a law lecturer. He also enjoys traveling and watching sports. Noella Seydu. Noella is a private legal practitioner and a consistent member of our three-lawyer panel on the show. She plays a dual role as the host of the show and likes to play tennis and read.
Births were actually not registered, in Ghana until sometime after the passage of the Cemeteries Ordinance of 1888. The Cemetery Ordinance of 1888 focused mainly on registering deaths that occurred in the country. And subsequent to that, in the 1912, the idea of registering births came up. And that saw the enactment of the Births and Deaths and Burials Ordinance of 1912, which was later amended in 1926. The current legislation regulating births and deaths in Ghana is the Registration of Births and Deaths Act of 1965, Act 301. That is the current legislation that regulates births and deaths in Ghana.
Just to add to what you've mentioned, in terms of the legal regime, I think if we look at the United Nations Convention on the Right of a Child and also the African Charter, there's that component of a mandatory registration of children and all that. So beyond the context of what you've just mentioned, which is the legal framework within our jurisdiction, there are other international frameworks that also mandates that a child needs to be registered once the child is born and all that. So that is just to add to what you've mentioned. And also the fact that the Act is designed in a way that a child is supposed to be issued with a birth cert once the child is born, and the first 12 months is free. You don't have to pay any amount for the registration of a child.
I think that in talking about legal framework, we shouldn't also forget the Children's Act, which makes it the responsibility or places the responsibility on the parents of the child to register their birth. And both names of these parents have to be on the certificate unless perhaps the father is not known. Mainly because, of course, it's always the mother that carries the child. So we can say we don't know the mother, but if there's some reason to suggest that you don't know your child's father, it's just the mother's name can be on this certificate. So people wonder all the time, why struggle to register? Because in times past, before this legal framework came, people used landmarks and occasions. Like, it was raining when I had you, there was a typhoon, and then now you are left to calculate and figure it out. There was hunger.
There was hunger.
It was the day of the coup. So you now have to calculate which of the coups, and then figure out that.
Lola, it is interesting how many people came onto this earth, exited, and were never recorded. The instance of their birth were never captured. And this has a lot of implications on development. The identity of the person, the right of the person to be associated with, let's say, parents, the right of the person to be a citizen of a country may be affected one way or the other, because such persons, if the incidents of their births are not captured, we never know. It may lead to statelessness, because we need information on the parents and background of these people to be able to somehow identify which nationality such a person may belong to. So not registering births is a very big issue. Apart from that, of course, if we are able to register births, it gives credible data to, let's say, the National Development Planning Commission and other, agencies of government who will be able to plan very well. Statistical Service, for instance, in the conduct of their work, they will need to cooperate with the births and deaths registry and other institutions of state that capture these kinds of vital statistics. If we do not have that, it's likely to be a problem for us.
It's in fact interesting that you mentioned the issue of identity, because if you look at the future of well-being of a child, it starts with having a legal identity, and that is very important in a sense that it affords you some kind of protection or some kind of rights that you can enjoy, because there are certain countries that, depending on your nationality, you can't access certain fundamental rights. So education, health, and all that. So if you do not have a birth certificate, it means that even the issue of your legal identity is in doubt, and on the basis of that, we can't even identify your nationality. So it leaves you open to several abuses and all that. And just to add to that, the reason why such persons who are not registered are open up to abuses is that it becomes easy for people to exploit them in terms of, so let's imagine that a child has been used or a child is a victim of a crime. How do you determine the age of that child to say that this child is a juvenile if you do not have the child's birth set? So in order to avoid situations like that.
Medical inquiry.
Exactly, unless you have a
Is that even accurate most of the time?
That is not even accurate. So sometimes doing that or going through that process is very important to ensure that the child is not being exploited, is not being abused, and all that. So a legal identity is very important, and also in terms of ensuring that the child's nationality is something that is well captured and well known. It's also very important, because that would also determine the kind of rights that you enjoy, economic rights, even electoral rights and all that.
I think that in times past, I always like to go back to historical times, because that was before we had all these opportunities. People's educational progress could be delayed by virtue of the lack of a birth certificate. So they just come, what I hear is that they will come to your household and they ask you to put your hand over your head to touch your other ear. And if you're successful, then you are of school-going age. If you're not, then you're not ready. So assuming you just have a shorter hand, you are likely to go to school later on in life So they steal some years from you just by virtue of the fact that you don't have a birth certificate.
Yeah, I know of someone who has a name. He applied to Legon, and he stated that he's a Ghanaian, and he didn't have anything to prove that he's a Ghanaian. Oh. So I think it was after the second year they asked him to bring proof of
evidence, yes,
evidence that he's a Ghanaian, and he kept saying that he's a Ghanaian, but he doesn't have anything to prove. The reason being that he was paying fees as a Ghanaian student.
Okay.
So I think because of his name, they were more inclined to think that he's from a different country.
Yeah,
so
pretending
he should be
to be
international fees and not because this someone who schooled outside and he has a name that is foreign. So and all that. So it's very important that you have birth cert to be able to determine issues like this, because your birth cert will let us know your nationality in one way or the other.
Yeah.
It is also interesting because the birth cert enables a person to access other, let's say, identity documents, such as driver's license, passport, NIA, Ghana card, which has become a very voter ID card, and all of that. The birth cert is a very fundamental document.
So to be safe, we just say it supports the process, since we don't know what will happen at every given point.
That is right.
Yeah. Also, if you want to pass on your nationality to your children, especially if you've gone to have your kids abroad, or your kids have another nationality aside, and they now want to come and register as citizens, the evidence of your citizenship is used to support. So your birth cert can be used to support the processes for them to register as Ghanaians. It's just in support of what you just mentioned.
That is right. With the issue of birth registration in Ghana, like my colleague rightly said, under 1 year, that is 12 months, registration is free. After 12 months, there's a fee. However, there are still some gaps in our law. For instance, if a person is above 5 years, or if there's no notification of birth, so let's say somebody is born by, in a hospital or by at home,
traditional birth attendant,
with the assistance of a traditional birth attendant, there may not be the birth and death registry may not be notified of the incidence of the birth. So we have to wait for the parent or guardian of this person to take the initiative of registering the birth. Until then, we have a gap. And this is likely to affect the database, the data that we use in our development planning and all of that. So I think that there's the need for institutions of state to cooperate with the births and deaths registry. So for instance, hospitals should be mandated to notify the birth and death registry of instances of birth of a child, so that the birth and death registry can follow up to the facilities where these children were born and take the initiative of registering the child. If this is not done, this is likely to affect the progress of births and death registration in Ghana. Indeed, UNICEF says that 40% of births in Ghana as of today have not been registered. Wow. So this is a wide gap that we need to find ways, innovative ways of addressing.
If you look at the data, which was released by UNICEF, I think as of 2012, we had about 40% being registered. And till today, I think we've made significant progress in terms of increasing the number, and now we have about 60%. But the challenge has been in the northern part of the country, and we all know why, because of access to registration centers and all that, and some of the challenges, and because of lack of education and all that. So it is still a challenge out there, and I think, like you mentioned, institutional coordination and how they collaborate with each other something that will pick up.
I want to believe that the hospitals and the maternity homes are doing their part to some extent.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I had a baby, but the last time I went through that awesome experience, what normally happens is you get a weighing card for your child.
Exactly.
And right on it, there are places or parts that you fill in the child's father's name,
Exactly.
the mother's name, and the date of birth, the weight of the child. Now that document can be used to register
Yes.
as evidence, because the fear is that people will lie about the incidence of birth
Yeah.
just to get false documents. So with that weighing card, which is given strictly to newborns,
Yeah.
it's supported strongly, and it indicates the facility. That also helps you to know the assembly or the zone that you can go to register that
Very well,
birth.
Noella. But it's still, we still come back to the position that we are expecting the parents or
Yes.
guardians of these children to take the initiative of going ahead to register. There should be a system in place mandating these health facilities to automatically send data of the incidence of births that occur in their facilities. And indeed, we mustn't pretend as though nothing is being done. Out of the limited resources of the Births and Death Registry, of course, with the support of UNICEF and all of that, they now have what we call MBEF registration, which is some kind of automated form of registration using mobile phones and all of that. But the challenges of the Births and Death Registry as an institution of state stares us in the face. If we go and take a look at their, where their head office is, we may see that they need a lot of resources. Apart from that, they don't have enough, let's say, personnel across all the regions of the country. So this definitely would affect their ability to, as it were, register births that occur somewhere in Boko,
How I see
somewhere
it,
in Jirapa, in my hometown.
how I
and all of
see
that.
it is a vacuum in the sensitization, because I don't think anybody who really fully appreciates the importance of this document would choose not to.
Yeah.
To acquire one. Some people don't even know that they have to do
Yeah,
that.
they do.
So education is, they have no clue.
People
they are
don't
happy
even
to
know the essence
exactly
of having a birth certificate. So I've named
until
you,
it comes
that
up
is
one
it.
day
And
later in life.
Yeah.
Because if it's the parent and the person is not even educated in a very rural area and no health officer has come to even talk to them about it. So those community health nurses, probably there should be some synergy between the Births and Deaths Registry and them to see if they can at least just sensitize the parents, ask them, counsel them, get them to, because you can prosecute them for failing.
Funny enough, we have people who are educated who haven't.
Who still haven't.
Yes, who haven't registered their children. So it's not just about those who are not educated. And
maybe they just don't know where to start from, because that could be it.
In some other jurisdictions, when the birth of a child occurs, the information, relevant information is gathered, and the information is sent across to the institution responsible for the registration. And within 1 week or 2 weks, you go to your mail and you find a birth set of the child that has been born
Already sent in there.
You see, so when a mother gives birth to a child, and we know how, difficult it is, first few months for this mother, how are we expecting that mother to take the initiative of going?
It's great that it's on both parents.
Yes.
So fathers who are not having any difficult times postpartum should please take the initiative then as an equal responsibility holder.
Very well.
I know I'm the only woman here, but that's
we,
the reality.
We do agree. But of course, we also know that there are some few instances where there may be no father readily available for one reason or the other.
There are instances you don't even have the mother, you don't have you don't have both parents, and the duty is now on someone to do that. Sometimes the law even places the obligation on the occupier of the place where the child was given birth to take that initiative. And if that person fails to do so, then what happens? And or again, if you look at the law, you realize that the requirement for registration and the information required.
Yeah.
You look at the requirement that an immunization and also ensure that you have a weighing card and all that.
Yeah.
And sometimes some of them,
No
after
record.
giving birth,
They
that
just
is it.
disappear.
They disappear. And going back for this information to start the entire process, they just decided that, look, it's something too much of a job for them. So I think the requirement too is another issue. But again, it is there to ensure the welfare of the child. So I think we should, again, going forward, try to make it very flexible for people and also educate people on why there's the need to have a birth cert. And we can do that through the churches and all that.
Yeah. We'll go for a quick commercial break. When we come back, I know we're not discussing registration of deaths, but I'm curious, what are the percentages of the registration of deaths compared to registration of births? We might not have readily the numbers, but for some reasons, I want to believe that more people register deaths than births. Stay tuned, don't go away, we'll be right back.
No victim of gender-based violence should be silent. Every human deserves dignity and respect. If your health, dignity, and security is undermined, you must seek assistance. Call the Orange Support Center for assistance on toll-free number 0800 111 222. This message is by the kind courtesy of the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA.
My mother passed on to me an age-old moisturizing secret handed down from generation to generation. Shea butter has been and still remains the ultimate and trusted natural product for the skin. It is safe for all, including newborns. I use Violon Shea butter products for my hair and skin and for all my children right from birth. Violon Shea butter is an amazing diaper cream. I love my family. That is why I trust only Violon Shea butter products for our skincare needs.
Violon Shea Butter. Feed your skin right.
Yes, so just a quick response to your question as to whether we do have a lot of people registering their children compared to deaths. We may not have the data as we speak now, but I would say that a lot of people register deaths compared to
Higher
yes,
chance of registration of deaths.
Yes, a lot of people for several reasons. Several reasons, we all know that for issues of maybe property, you have to go to court, letters of administration and all that. Then you have to prove that the person is indeed dead. So on that, the person is under an obligation to at least go through the process compared to registration of birth that is not, they don't really stand to benefit a lot at that instance.
Yeah.
Yes, as compared to the instant benefit.
And I'm sure they believe that there's time. I mean, when the child grows up, let him find his own certificate.
Exactly.
Apart from that courage, the requirement that a death certificate be
Produced or
before,
presented, yeah.
and a burial certificate issued before a person can be buried, may be a reason why some people, most people would probably go in for a death certificate.
And also because the hospitals help, mostly these come from, there's a cause of death or some kind of coroner's report that you now use to process that. And then with the permits, once you apply, if not, you can have your funeral, and you know how Ghanaians, we cherish our funerals because it's our last opportunity to pay respects. So
that is very true. But
and there's criminal liability in not registering the deaths compared to births.
But there's some part of this country, we still have many instances where people are buried without any death certificate, medical cost of death certificate, without any burial permit. So this is an issue that we need to take on as a nation.
I think I would say there are instances where people bury without permit, but after burial they go for a death certificate.
Yes, because as for that they need it to apply for property.
They need it. So as for that, they go ahead with the burial without permit, but as for the death certificate, they have their own way of getting.
But though it's illegal to bury without a permit, I think the requirement for the permit is not practical. The compliance is problematic where perhaps it's a Muslim community. Assuming somebody dies on a Sunday.
It takes 14 days, that within 14 days, the law says that within 14 days you must apply, then get your certificate before you go ahead.
I mean, let's even pretend that you can get the same day within hours, but then it's a Sunday, and Muslims, have to bury same day. How do you get that certification on a Sunday?
Apart from that, the family are mourning. They are mourning.
The shock of it alone.
They are mourning. So if you are asking them to register the death within 14 days, it may be impracticable.
No, 14 days actually is more realistic compared to those who have to bury same day.
Same day.
You just hit by this situation. You have hours to prepare the body for burial, and then at what point do you leave to go to the office to apply? And I feel like with modern times, we should have a faster way of getting these things done, maybe virtually, online applications here and there. I don't know if
that's true.
We've caught up yet.
That's true, but all of this should keep us thinking as a nation. The Births and Deaths Registration Act of 1965, Act 301, was passed, as the name suggests, in 1965. And it has been operationalized all these years. There might have been some gaps identified, deficiencies in the existing law. Having operationalized the law for all these years, we should be able to identify these deficiencies and see how best we can amend the law or reenact the law such that these deficiencies can be resolved to aid, to assist people in the births and deaths registration.
In fact, there's an ongoing process being carried out by or being sponsored by UNICEF in trying to come out with an LI to give effect to some of these issues or some of these provisions under the Act. So I know there's something going on in the pipeline in order to give effect to some of these regulatory issues and all that. But like I mentioned, the benefits are not the same. So if you compare the benefits of registering a child and the benefits of registering death, they are not the same. So I think you will not have the numbers being the same. And obviously, people are more equipped to register deaths compared to the registration of a child, which they don't stand to benefit immediately. So
we all know the importance of or the advantages of having your birth or your child's birth registered. And don't you think some people intentionally would choose to defer registration just to cheat the system? So if perhaps there's, the retirement age is 60 in Ghana for most professions. Somebody wants to extend his opportunity to continue to work if he feels he's fit. For those who only come to registering their births when they are adults, about to enter the workforce or about to do something major, don't you think that is there? Also for sportsmen, we've always had this our football age in quotes situation. Don't you think some people may intentionally be delaying that?
Well, it's a possibility, but it all goes back to what you were saying, the issue of sensitization. We need to educate people on their rights and their obligations as parents. They need to register births that occur and all of that. And we need to, as a nation, also encourage people to understand that not everyone will make it in life at a particular stage.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that prevents, for instance, maybe a 30-year-old from making it. So you may not need to work up to 60 years. You may voluntarily retire at maybe 45 or 50, and there may be no need for you to work till 60. Sometimes the opposite actually happens. So maybe somebody goes ahead and probably presents a different age, which is not the real age. And then the person is not medically fit because of some conditions that are probably related to age. But the person is still on the job. Maybe on the record, the person is still 50 years or 40 years. So you have probably 20 years to struggle through your medical condition till your retirement. Whereas if you had presented your real age, you probably would have retired and gotten your benefits that are due you and move on with life.
Yes,
so
just to add to that, I think the earlier issue that I mentioned about institutional collaboration and all that, if we're able to do it very well, we'll be able to deal with issues like this, in a sense that if I take my child to school at that age, the school should be able to require that I produce evidence of my child's birth
Some
certificate.
schools do, and they even ask for the vaccination history before they admit.
Yes, so at that point, you are being, like, there's that obligation on you to produce the child's birth certificate. So it becomes practically difficult for you to wait till 5 years, 6 years before you can actually go ahead and then register the child. So if we have that institutional collaboration and coordination between the births and deaths, between Ghana Education Service, between the Ministry of Health and all that, it will serve as a check and a layer to ensure that people actually register their children on time.
But that is if you want your child to go to preschool. Exactly. Some people skip all that and start from standard 1. And I don't think from class 1 they ask.
But again, that is even wrong, because if you look at the Children's Act, you look at even the rights of a child.
I can choose to homeschool my child for the nursery bit. And then send the child in for class 1.
Something that is in the pipeline as to whether now you can just keep your child and wait till 4 years before you then
not just that, some people keep their kids at home and let them write all the major exams.
In doing this, we have to also be careful such that we don't infringe on the constitutional right of a child to, for instance, attend school. If the child is being presented to the school and the school is saying that you don't have a birth cert, and because of that we cannot enroll you, that may also affect the constitutional right of such a child.
It is not to say that if you don't present your birth cert, we will not admit you. It is one of the requirements for admission. It is a requirement. So we are not saying that failure to produce it, you are denied.
Disqualifies you, absolutely.
Disqualifies you. We can still give you time to process the child's birth cert while the child is admitted.
We'll still come back to this angle because we also have our rights as parents, but then how do we all coexist so that children are not shortchanged in the process? Let's take a listen to the sampled opinions of people on the streets of Accra to see their thoughts on this topic.
Birth registration is highly important because when you register as your child, you give birth, you register the child, it helps the country at large to know the number of children and also to determine the population, the current number.
Birth registration to the state and to the individual is equally important because it gives the nation the data it needs or it requires to demarcate the national cake to individuals and communities and probably allocate resources to the development of such areas. I think it's prudent and important that children be registered under a national policy to benefit individually and to the nation.
The procedures, as to the registration of birth, you go to birth and death registry. You go there and then you be given a form to fill. As to the parents, their profession, and the child's name, the date of birth. Yeah, those are the informations taken to register the child.
I think a number of the people alluded to the importance of births and birth registration in Ghana, and the fact that that feeds into our national data planning and development efforts and all of that. So it's interesting. I mean, a lot of people out there know what the law is, what the requirements are, and it is important that we continue to sensitize people so that we can have a lot more compliance. Yeah.
Yes, and yes, listening to them, you realize that they've just summed up our discussion here.
Largely.
Yeah, and they know what is required of them and all that. But I think previously the challenge has been for instance, when you go there, you're asked to provide a name. And previously we had challenges whereby you provide a name and they'll tell you that no, you can't use this name. We've had people who say, okay, I'm Nana Kwame, and you can't be Nana Kwame. And I think it's been a challenge, I think some few years ago. And I don't know what is the current state as at now. But it's something that, from what they've said, they know what is required of them and all that. So I think we have to continue sensitizing
Talking
people
about the name, also there are some people who are told to reduce the number of names they have because it won't fit into the space allocated for that. And I feel like that is so unfair because it's me if I choose a whole sentence and that is my first name. How is that your problem?
That's right,
you know, you have to accommodate me.
Right. And indeed, like Courage said, the issue of prefixes and suffixes. Somebody comes and says that I am this junior. He wants the junior to be captured. The birth and death, registry, indeed, the Act says that no, that is prohibited. So you cannot use maybe names like Nana Efo. The person says that is my name.
More like it's a title. That's what they think.
That's what they think.
Yeah.
So it's an issue that we need to have a national discourse on and see what the way forward is.
Yeah, because for me, if you say that registration of a child or issuance of a birth certificate is recognition of a person's legal identity.
Yeah.
And I'm named Nana Kwame Jr. The question is, how does that affect
your records?
Your records. Because for me, to say that that is prohibited, because even if I take the junior out, we'll still have 10 million Nana Kwame.
Do you know my pet peeve with this process? It's where, for instance, you say that my name is maybe John, let's say you say Clenham John with a surname.
Yes.
And then they tell you that John should be your first name and insist. And rather, your preferred first name should be your middle name.
Yes.
That is like my pet peeve with the process because sometimes they just do it arbitrarily.
Yeah.
You come back and then to receive it and then they've switched because they're like, okay, that's your English name and it should be first. I don't know where we got that from. But more and more people are choosing more local names.
I experienced the same thing when I applied to Legon. I think I spelled my entire name. Then they decided to use my middle name, just make it A.
They abbreviated it for you.
Yeah, and it has remained so on my certificate. Courage A Asabagna.
Courage A.
Yeah, A. And I don't remember writing just an A there.
It's really, really unfair.
Yeah.
But I mean, that brings still the issue of electronic registration, because most of the registration forms that we have are manual registration forms that allows for only some limited space. So the registrants may be challenged in trying to capture the full name. But we have a well-developed electronic registration system where you can input the name onto the system. I mean, it doesn't matter how many names that a person presents, you'll be able to get
biometric.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Biometric, so that you do away with this issue of having the same names, thinking that they are of the same person and all that. So we can even have that where you do electronic biometric registration and all that, you capture.
Should the states be allowed to dictate names? That's what we're talking now. But the question is, what if you choose a name that is just so unreasonable or offensive. Like you want to name your child idiot.
Who determines that?
But you know, you have rights, but you are naming somebody who cannot speak for him or herself. Should you be allowed to name your son idiot? Should you be allowed to name your son Satan? Should you be allowed to name your son fool? That is the question. Like, where do we draw the line? Where does the state intervene to protect children from parents who are so angry that they want to name their child furious?
I think it depends on how you want to look at it. Legally speaking, if you look at Article 27 of the Constitution, it talks about making sure that special care is accorded to children and all that. So, special care, you look at the Children's Act, the welfare of the child and all that.
The best interest of the child,
the best interest of the child and all that. So you can make that argument to say that, look, this name doesn't represent the child in a very good manner. So
as a citizen of this country.
Exactly. Because I remember in Nigeria, someone named his dog after Buhari. You remember that incident? And he was arrested.
But that is a different...
No, I'm just looking at...
I know, like, you know,
yes.
It's offensive.
So if somebody decides to name his child after a name that is something that a lot of people won't want to do with, I think...
I feel like the child cannot decide, first of all. So
on the issue of certain names being, if you like, undesirable, we need to rethink it, because sometimes the person who is giving the name has a reason why he or she is giving the name to the child.
What could be the reason the father calls his child idiot?
The reason is that I don't like the child, so I'm naming the child idiot.
I don't like Lucifer.
Exactly.
No,
come on.
Sometimes the name given to the child is not really to reflect the values of the child or whatever, but sometimes it's to a third party.
We always so you don't put your child into your fight.
No, the name represents.
It's not that third party that is called by that name. And you know that in our local parlance, we always say that whatever name they give you has an effect on how you grow up, because
the
it's
right
like
to dignity.
Exactly.
If you take a name
self-dignity, if you take a name like a name that does not dignify the child in a certain way.
If you take a name like maybe Deaf, in my local, maybe you may have had a situation where
nobody will be called Kun. They will be called Kun, Era, or Kun. You know, it's always a sentence. Then maybe the person shortens it. But nobody in the local space, in the Dagari group, will name their child just Kun Simplista, which means death.
No, but the point I'm trying to make is that
shame on death or
shame
something.
on death, yes. So
but that's not an offensive
name. Event that occurred, that is the reason why they are giving the name.
That is not an offensive name.
You know, we used to have a situation where maybe a mother gives birth to a child, and every time the child passes away, and then the mother gives birth this time around, the father and the family think that they have to give a name that is not attractive to death. And that way,
to death. But we are not saying offensive to society.
Exactly.
There's a difference.
Yeah,
exactly.
That is true.
Names that are not
and in the local community where that name is understood, it's not offensive because they get the import.
Exactly.
But then you translate it into English, and it's not now that in an office setting, anytime you say your name, you now have to explain, I'm called Lucifer, but it's because my mom means shame on Lucifer.
Yes.
We have to go for a break at this point.
Right.
Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
My mother passed on to me an age-old moisturizing secret handed down from generation to generation. Shea butter has been and still remains the ultimate and trusted natural product for the skin. It is safe for all, including newborns. I use Violon Shea butter products for my hair and skin, and for all my children right from birth. Violon Shea butter is an amazing diaper cream. I love my family. That is why I trust only Violon Shea butter products for our skincare needs.
Violon Shea Butter. Feed your skin right.
No victim of gender-based violence should be silent. Every human deserves dignity and respect. If your health, dignity, and security is undermined, you must seek assistance. Call the Orange Support Center for assistance on toll-free number 0800 111 222. This message is by the kind courtesy of the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA.
Hi Nuela, my name is Jessica from Tema. I want to ask, can I add underscore as part of my official name? Say Jessica underscore Ama. Does the law permit that?
For me, I doubt if you can register such a name, Ama underscore what. I doubt, because that for me, the underscore for me is not a name.
What we normally see are hyphens, I believe.
Yes. Yes. So I don't see how you can convince me that that is a name, because if you look at the true meaning or even the ordinary meaning of what a name is, then you write Ama underscore, then you write another.
Writing out that name, people would always mistaken the underscore for a hyphen anyway.
Or are you going to spell underscore?
But shouldn't you be allowed to opt for what you want? Shouldn't this person try to challenge this frustration in court, where they go to insist that, look, I want to add underscore to my name. That is my unique ID. There will be nobody else with an underscore, which suggests that it's easier to identify me.
That would be interesting. I think that one other thing that we have to consider is the forms that have been designed by the Births and Deaths Registry, whether there's an opportunity for you to enter that. And, if you enter that, whether the Births and Deaths Registry, in printing out the birth cert, whether they will include that underscore in the printout. Unless you have a very strong position that there must be an underscore.
For me, I think the angle from which you are looking at the question is to suggest that if they do have provision, then
they should be allowed.
Then they should be allowed.
Clearly, they're already opposed to it.
Yeah, I think we should be asking ourselves whether, granted they don't, can I insist
on the right,
that they make provision for me to include that?
But there should be a line, because if that is allowed easily, very soon we'll have emojis as part of names, where the person has to write the name and add a smiley, and the smiley is actually part of the name.
Exactly. And for me, that can't form or can't be part of your name.
Well, but what does the law say? Indeed, it is important to recognize that the Births and Deaths Registry, registration law, does not provide for this kind of situation. It does not expressly prohibit the use of, let's say, underscores and all of that.
Maybe
what
in
it
Word,
prohibits
you could have
is the use of prefixes and suffixes.
Yeah.
So prefixes such as maybe Nana, Efu, Tobi, this, Mama, Na, this, and then suffixes such as Junior. That is what the law, that is what the law expressly prohibits. So it may be good to test the law
for now, but I feel like with time we should allow those as well.
Yes.
Because I can choose to have Na, and it's not a prefix. It's actually my first name.
Yeah, that's right.
I should be allowed to use it.
You should, because for me, we should be able to look at the cultural context of our society and all that. Within your cultural setting, are you somebody who can be recognized as Nana Ama Sewa? If that is so within your cultural setting, what prevents you from registering such name?
I also see a function where people expect that you should have a masculine name as your surname. It's been in the system. I don't see anything wrong with being a Noella, Cynthia, if you like. But then there's always this insistence that it has to be a man's name at the end of the name. What if the couple has decided that this time, instead of having the father's name at the end, is the mother's first name they prefer at the end of the child's name? So I don't know what your mind is.
It's called Nana Sewa Watma.
Yes.
No, Watma.
Or maybe Abraham Cynthia, for instance. It shouldn't be a problem.
I guess they'll tell you
Abraham
they should
Cynthia
make it
for a girl?
Cynthia Abraham.
No, but you are male.
Okay.
So your first name is Abraham,
Exactly.
but
Okay.
your surname is
Yes,
Cynthia. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with our culture and upbringing. We are all, I mean, we told the line of going with our father's
Not
name or
necessarily.
grandfather's
So
name.
even where we have
and all of that. So-
matrilineage, we
Exactly.
still have
We still-
male surnames. And I've been like, then what is the point?
Yeah.
well, maybe you should test the law.
I mean, I'm yet to find somebody who has a problem like that trying to register a feminine surname.
Yeah.
Though, yeah, so that would be like a man name.
Yeah, and even there are instances whereby you mention your name and they ask you your father's name.
Yes.
And they realize that it's different. And but how come you have a different surname and your father too has a different surname? And they try to use your father's surname as
I know it's in your case.
trying to use your father's surname.
He's bringing it home.
Yes, he's bringing it home.
Yes, trying to use your father's surname as your surname.
They are imposing
Yes.
that you should choose that as your surname.
Yes, exactly. So, but for me, I like I mentioned, there should be certain defined limits within which the law should operate and all that. And in trying to do that, we should try to balance the personal rights of a person as opposed to the efforts being made to regulate the entire process.
But again, we come to the point that this is a 1965 law that has been operationalized all these years. We need to have a conversation around the provisions of this law and see which provisions do we want to amend, which provisions do we want to keep, and all of that, so that these kind of contemporary issues will be dealt with in the law, and that will give some clarity to the institutions of state that are responsible for the enforcement of the Births and Deaths Registration
The
Act.
Act itself predicts the Constitution, so
Exactly.
This is like a colonial law.
Exactly. So
Very well.
you can see that it was done within that context with that understanding, and didn't have the foresight to see some
There's
of these
been
contemporary issues.
evolution, since, and
issues. So I think there's a need for us to review the law. If review will take a very long time, by way of legislation and an ally that we, in a sense, try to answer some of the immediate questions for now, so that going forward.
Well, talking about review, indeed, I know that there was a bill before Parliament, the Births and Registration of Births and Deaths Bill of 2015. Professor Raymond Atugba was a national consultant, and you and I had the opportunity of assisting him in that project. So we may want to find out the state of that bill now, whether, it's still going to be passed in its current state, or we'll go back to the drawing board and see how we can really look at it. And
I think you'll be the
present
best
it
people
back
to answer this now.
Yes, present it back to
You'll be
Parliament.
the best.
Yes,
But since 2015, it's been a while. I think it's about time.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we get to having it, amended.
That's right.
In as much as it is every child's right to own or be granted a birth certificate, it still is the responsibility of parents and other adults to ensure that steps are taken for same to be arrived at. We have discussed many, many reasons why owning a birth certificate is a very, very vital and necessary thing to do. Today on Law Express, we've been discussing the registration of births. We thank you so much for staying with us. My name is Noella Seidu. My co-panelists for today have been Courage Asabagna, private legal practitioner, and Vitus Bang, another private legal practitioner. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the show. Thank you very much for staying with us. Goodbye.